that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's start showing.
Okay, no problem, man. We're underway.
So I'll probably be throwing a few points over to you, Brian.
Okay.
As I go along, just so that I don't sound like I'm sort of monologuing. But I've got a sort of brief agenda, and I don't want to take too long. I think the last time we went for 2 or 3 hours. I think we went a bit overboard that time. So I'll try and keep it a bit briefer this time. I've got some points that I'd like to make. I'll just run through what the agenda will be.
Okay.
So firstly, I want to talk a bit about what Fix8 is, and a little bit about the project history, which might give some interesting perspectives as to how we got where we were or where we are today. Then I might talk about why you might need Fix8, and perhaps why you might need it. Then I'll talk a bit about what Fix8 is in terms of a solution. And there's a bit of misunderstanding about what Fix8 can offer people. And I sort of elaborate a bit on that because it might help clear up some misconceptions. Then I'll talk a bit about what you need to build an application using Fix8. Then we'll talk a bit about Windows. There's been a lot of interest in the Windows version, which I think last time we spoke, Brian, it was on our roadmap, but we weren't really very sure on whether we'd ever be able to get there, and as it happens in the last 12 months we have. Then we'll talk a bit about support, who you can ask for help, and then perhaps a little bit about the fixed versions that are supported and whether Fix8 works with any sell-side provider, ISP or exchange that you might be interested in connecting to. Then we'll talk a bit about Fix8 MT, which is Fix8 Market Technologies, which is my company, and our involvement in the project. And then we'll throw it up to some questions.
Sounds good.
All right, so Fix8, what is it? So let's talk a bit about what it is briefly and a bit about the project history. So Fix8 is a C++ application framework for fixed connectivity. And I mean, that can mean different things to different people, but let's just say it's a toolkit for building fixed applications that provide fixed connectivity between market participants. And this project started really from my own interest in Fix. I've been working with Fix for 15 years. Primarily for exchange, basically technology vendors who provide fixed engines to exchanges. And that's where I sort of cut my teeth in the Fix world. And we had our own proprietary Fix engine, which was developed from scratch, C++. And it was quite good, but it wasn't very flexible and had extremely high demands for maintenance. And every new client that we got, we had to do an extraordinary amount of customization to provide Fix engine. In fact, we may as well have rewritten the whole thing. It was just so cumbersome, and it required such extraordinary effort on the development team. And because we'd made so many design decisions early on that were sort of not optimal, and because so much code had been written on top of it, as is the case, we were stuck with it. And this is sort of what happens. And so I was, sort of acutely aware of that shortcoming, was thinking all along, I can do better than this. I didn't actually make a start on it. I was having these thoughts about writing my own fix engine probably in 2003. But, life gets in the way of a lot of things, and it got in the way of that project, and I never made a start. It wasn't until 2010 that I, was working for another company who had a need for a fix engine. I was reminded of my earlier sort of frustrations and decided to, in my spare time this is, to sort of draft up a design. And in fact, what I was doing was basically just mucking around with ideas. And one of the key ideas that I was mucking around with was using an XML schema as an input to a code generator. And this is at the core of Fix8. So my inspiration for this model was a protocol known as ASN.1. Now, many of your listeners, or you also, Brian, may have heard of it as abstract syntax notation, which is actually a sort of generic grammar for describing a wire protocol. And ASN.1 is used heavily in the telecommunications industry, in the aerospace industry, for describing binary protocols. And in fact, GSM, the mobile protocol, uses ASN.1. So my inspiration for Fix8 was an open source project known as Snack, which is a ASN.1 compiler, and it takes ASN.1 grammar code or description language and converts it into C++ encoders and decoders, which you then build into an application. So this is a really cool idea, and I mean, code generators are not new. They've been around for years, but they're always very domain specific. But there wasn't one in the fixed domain, and so that was my sort of inspiration. And in fact, something similar had been done at NASDAQ. In fact, a lot of the big companies use for domain-specific languages often have this approach where they will take a domain-specific grammar and write an application which basically compiles that into, or generates code, which is then forms the basis of an application. So this is where Fix8 got that idea. So the purpose of that really is to provide a mechanism where the primary input for describing the sort of fix that is spoken is actually an XML schema document, and that is the single and primary authority for the fix variant. Now using using a schema document in Fix is not new, but generally in the past it's been used for validation purposes. It hasn't been used as a primary input to describe and generate a complete view of the fix spoken. I think, for example, if you look at quickfix, quickfix optionally uses an XML schema to validate inbound fix messages, and also to describe and handle repeating groups. Fix8 does the same, except instead of validating it, it actually creates the very code which does that validation. and it does that in a fully deterministic way, and it's completely described right from the original XML specifications right through to the decode. So that was the inspiration, and that was one of the sort of primary ideas that I was working on, and that I spent probably 6 months mucking around with that before I had anything that remotely worked. There's a lot of trial and error, and so late in 2010, I got to the point where I could provide an XML schema, at that point only 4.2 and 4.4, and I could generate a whole pile of code which I cobbled together into a very basic application, and it could encode and decode fixed messages. That's all it could do. There was no session management, there was no log on, there was no heartbeating, there was none of that, none of those services that are required for a workable fixed session. There was simply an encode and a decode. But it worked. And I could tweak the schema, rerun it, and I'd get those changes were propagated right through to the encode and the decode, and it's quite powerful. And so from there, I decided, right, well, this is completely useless without a session layer, and the session is really critical. And Fix, obviously, it's a connection and session-oriented protocol. So then I spent the next 4 or 5 months developing the session layer, and mid-2011, I had basically the sort of core of the engine and the session working, and I brought it into GitHub probably late 2011, and I had a few interested parties, a few people that were interested, and they helped sort of shape its development from there. A couple of key individuals who really helped me get it from the sort of hobbyist type model to actually a sort of usable, workable piece. Okay, so that's the history, at least, till 2011. So let's just move on to why do we need it, and why did I release it as open source, and why do you need it as why do we need yet another fix engine? So I've just described how the code generator generates code which you incorporate into an application. One of the primary benefits of that is performance. The code that is generated is highly optimizable, and there's a lot of metadata which is used during the encode and the decode, and that metadata itself is optimized in terms of accessing it and in terms of manipulating it. So the actual encode and the decode is pretty fast. It's not as fast, it will never be as fast as a natively written decoder for a specific message. That will always be the fastest. The next fastest thing will be something like a Fix8, which has a more generalized approach. However, that generalized approach is fairly optimized. So why do we need it? The main reason I think that Fix8 exists is really for performance. Another primary benefit which it offers over the other approaches is complete control of messages and fields, which I've just described the origins of Fix8 and the model that I chose So that provides you complete control over every messaging field that is spoken. And this has some benefits in that you can pare down the fix that you speak to only what you need. So in an HFT type project, you can speak the fix that you need to speak, and everything else you can eliminate. That complete control over the fix that is spoken, has some other interesting potential benefits as well. One of those being that the actual fix footprint is very constrained or reduced, and that might lend itself to an FPGA type solution. I've yet to speak to anybody about that, but it's a possibility. So, as I said, performance is the primary thing, and complete control of the fix that's spoken is probably a secondary benefit. So is Fix8 a turnkey solution? Is it what actually is it? What actually is it providing you? Well, it isn't. It isn't a turnkey fix engine. It's not like the Camerons or the Onyxes or the Rapid Editions or any of those guys that are providing a complete fix engine. It isn't one of those sort of products. It's primarily an application framework. It's a library or a toolkit. Excuse me. So you still need to build your own application on top of it. But it provides a lot of support to help you do that. Things like session and connection classes, logging services, fix printing, message persistence, configuration classes. So there's a whole lot of stuff there in the toolkit to sort of help you build an application, but you still have to write your own application. You still have to roll your own, so to speak. It could talk any fix variant that you throw at it, and it can handle any of the standard fix fields. Supports SSL. There's a whole lot of stuff that is in the general, is normally expected of a fix adapter. So it can support all that.
David, we already got one comment from a person by the name of JPH and JDFG. I'll say John for it's probably a typo, but the comment was, but Fix8 requires third-party libraries dependent upon ASM that don't lend well to FPGA solutions versus quickfix, which is fully integrated.
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, the third-party libraries that are required,
yeah,
can be replaced. In fact, there is a bit of an effort amongst the Fix8 developers, a few of us, who have a similar view to the requirements for third-party libraries. One of the things that possibly could be done on the FPGA side is the encode, the decode, some of the more lower level operations. The session side, the connectivity side, well, typically FPGAs provide sort of ramped up high performance connectivity anyway. It's really the session stuff that's third party library. That's I agree. That's a fair comment. All right.
Yes, that was it. Sorry, man.
Okay, that's fine. So, what do you need to build a Fix adapter using Fix8? Which interestingly just follows on from that comment there. There is a requirement for third-party libraries, and the reason for that is that a lot of the sort of services that an application like this needs are already in the public domain or are available freely, and are mature products in their own right. And we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So, for example, probably one of the most important ones is the actual network connectivity, TCP/IP, socket layer, etc. And we chose to use POCO for that. We could have chosen any other number of possible solutions out there. I mean, people are constantly saying, why didn't you use Boost? And, you know, we could have. In fact, one of the guys in the group still argues that we should use Boost. And maybe we will in the future. But we needed a reliable, mature socket interface. And we didn't want to write our own. The POCO library is in fact the only third-party package that is required. The rest are all optional. So, just getting back to that FPGA point, it could be possible to strip out the network layer from POCO, replace that with you know, a custom piece, and that would probably get you across the line. But there'd be a fair bit of work in doing that. So the POCO library is, you know, it has a lot of detractors, but some things it does very well, and the network layer is actually quite good. It's quite solid. Some of the other stuff it does is pretty Mickey Mouse. But Fix8 only uses the networking library, and you know, that provided, you know, a big boost to the project. If we had to write that ourselves, you know, sure we could do it, but we would suffer from a lot of the problems that applications like this do suffer from, which is, you know, there's a huge amount of collective experience and intelligence that goes into writing a socket library, a good and reliable one. And yeah, as I said, we chose to leverage that experience rather than write our own. So that actually is the main and only prerequisite, is the POCO library. There are others, but they're depending on your uses, and most of those third-party libraries are supported in all of the platforms that Fix8 runs on, which is primarily Windows, OS X, and Linux. So, to build your own adapter, primarily you need the POCO library, and you need to be running OS X, Windows, or Linux. Now, Fix8 will run on a lot of different hardware. In fact, it'll even run on ARM. I've had it running on ARM 7, V7. I think for most of the people that would consider using it for connecting to you know, in a typical market environment, it's going to be Windows or Linux. So, sorry?
Yeah, I got another comment from the same person as before. Might as well get that in now. Actually, I was going to ask this myself, and I know somebody else probably have it as well. Question was, will you support fast over fix, or are you mainly going to focus on supporting fix for execution with the Fix8 Pro version, and will there be performance difference versus the standard Fix8?
Okay.
I guess two questions there.
Can I answer that at the end?
Sure.
It's a good question. I think that will open up another conversation, which I'm sort of halfway through. So let's.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Yeah.
Let's just mark that one to answer later.
No problem.
Okay, good. Okay, so what I'm up to is now Windows, which I think to people in your group is probably going to be of the most interest. Certainly from what I understand, your membership, Brian, there's a lot of interest in the Windows.
Yeah, about 80% are Windows based.
80%.
Yeah.
Okay, so right from the start of the project, at least when I went public with it and started getting some interest from people out there, you know, probably half of the questions that were asked were, does it run on Windows? Does it run on Windows? And it, you know, the answer was no. It was strictly a Linux framework. And although I have some experience in the Windows world, I'm primarily a Unix, Linux guy. But I knew that this needed to be sorted out because the individual traders or small sort of prop shops do typically write their own, and they do it on Windows. Small algo shops, again, typically running Windows, typically they generally don't run Linux, and so really, I did want to include those people. I did want to include them in the roadmap, but I didn't really have the resources to do it. And then, probably about 18 months ago, a couple of guys joined the Fix8 group with the primary objective of porting it to Windows. That was their main interest. So the first version of that came out probably March or April last year, and it required a fair amount of mucking around. It didn't. The build required a fair amount of work. There was a lot of additional supporting libraries that were needed, but it worked. Since then, there's been quite a bit of refinement to that. We've now removed a lot of the additional external dependencies, and we're now supporting Win64, and we now have a DLL build, which is a big plus. Which basically means logically it's identical to the Linux target, which is a .sr shared object. In the same way, you can build a Fix8 DLL, and that sort of brings the Windows offering into line with the rest of the project. There's a very detailed how-to on the wiki, and there are a couple of guys in the group who can answer questions with a lot of authority. It's actually been fantastic. I've been very impressed with these guys, and it is being used by quite a few people out there, the Windows version, and it's quite solid. Because because the Windows build is so different from the Linux build, it's never going to be a sort of transparent and seamless jump, if you like. It's in order to make a project that is going to work on a number of different operating systems, some compromises have to be made. And because the project started out as a Linux project, the Windows build is a little bit more complex and requires just that little bit extra effort. But it works and it's supported, and the main code base compiles under Windows, so it is on the mainstream. There's no Windows branch, if you like. It is in the core version, which means changes that are made to the core engine are reflected in all of the different build environments. This is important. We didn't want to have a branch. We didn't want to have a Windows branch. We could have done that. We could have got the Windows version out there much more quickly if we'd done that, but we decided not to, and I'm glad we didn't, because that would be a nightmare now to maintain. And new features and functionality would probably not end up in the Windows version, given that the core development is still happening in Linux. The way we're going now, we have, 95% of the code is common to all the platforms. There's a lot of conditional compilation in the code, as you'd expect. Nonetheless, the core code base is common. So yeah, that's the Windows version. As I said, we've got a couple of guys that have a lot of experience with it. One guy in particular who's largely responsible for the current Windows version. He's very helpful as well. So if you have people out there who in your group who need help, who've got to embark on using the Windows version, there is a lot of expertise in our small group on it who can offer the sort of help that they might need. Which leads me on to the next point I want to talk about, which is support and help. Who can you ask? We're an open source project primarily, so it's all voluntary. All people in the group are all volunteers. But they're a fairly dedicated bunch, including myself. Most of the questions that get asked on the support forum get answered within 24 hours, which is pretty interesting. And I mean, I to a greater degree now, am sort of distancing myself a bit from those groups. I answer some of the questions, but I often leave them to, there's a couple of other guys that tend to always jump in and answer the questions. And it's really good. So there's probably about 4 or 5 people out there in the group that answer and support and offer help. We also have a developer group, which is a smaller support group, more specifically for development issues. And there's a couple of guys that answer questions there. And then, of course, there's the documentation, which is pretty thorough, not complete, but it's fairly extensive. We have a fairly comprehensive wiki. We also have a very detailed API documentation. It's an oxygen generated documentation. All of the code, all of the Fix8 code is all self-documenting. And we also have the Jira issues page, which also itself has a lot of documentation about issues, fixes, etc., which is fully indexed and searchable, so you get a lot of help there as well. So that's the support and who you can ask. The next question I often get asked is about fixed versions, and will Fix8 work with excuse me, my XYZ broker? And the short answer is yes, it will work with any fixed version. If we go back to my earlier comments about the schema-driven nature, essentially it could talk any fixed variant, including the Fix 5.0, the Fix8 with the separated session version and transport version. It will work with the Fix8s as well. So any fixed variant you have will work. Well, let me just qualify that. Greater than 4.0, we don't support anything less than 4.0. So a lot of the, particularly in the Forex world, a lot of the brokers will provide a very detailed fix spec. Sometimes they'll even provide that as an XML document. Some work is required to import and transform that into the fix XML document format that's needed by Fix8. That format is identical to the quickfix XML schema document. It's identical, and that was obviously by choice. So there was, there's quite a lot of work being done generating those schemas for a lot of different brokers and exchanges. So often, by hunting around, you can actually find the relevant schema. If you can't, you can always start with the basic fixed version and just edit in your changes based on the provided specification from your sell side provider, exchange or broker. And again, that's an important feature of Fix8, is that you can and it will work with any fixed version. The notion of custom fields really doesn't make sense in Fix8. I often get asked that question as well. In quickfix, we have this notion of a custom field where an application adds additional messages or fields at runtime. In the Fix8 world, really you make that change in your build. So we don't actually have that dynamic flexibility. We've given that up, I guess, to some degree. The notion of a custom field really means a custom fixed schema. But typically in a production environment, you wouldn't be adding custom fields on the fly. That would always require some development. So if it requires some development, then you may as well just edit the field in to the XML document and rebuild. Effectively, it's the same effort. Okay, so where am I now? Fix8. So I thought I'd just mention a bit about my company, which is Fix8 Market Technologies. So we, myself and another chap, are providing consultancy services around Fix8, and we're also managing the project. So we will always have an open source version. That's I'd like to say that from the outset. We're always going to have an open source version of Fix8. But we recognise, firstly, that there's obviously an opportunity for us to provide consulting services and make a business out of it, but also that a lot lot of people out there are not really comfortable with a strictly open source product. They want a little bit more assurance, a little bit more certainty, and that's where Fix8 Market Technologies comes in. We will be offering fairly soon a commercial version, which we've called Fix8 Pro, which initially will be essentially the open source version with a few additional features, but we will offer a standard SLA, and we will provide the sort of support that commercial operation looks for, and we're in the process of setting that up now. So Fix8 Market Technologies is really an organisation which will offer a more commercial services, support, consulting based on Fix8. And this is a model, I think, that a lot of the other products that started out as open source have evolved into. It's quite a common model, and I think it's one that I think benefits both the open source and the commercial world, because smaller organisations who probably want to leverage the open source products without and take advantage of the low sort of barrier to entry can still use the product as they evolve and develop, and they might choose to move to the commercial version. So that's sort of our thinking, and I think that's quite a common way that these things work. Products that start as open source and then end up evolving into a commercial product. It's a sort of nice compromise. So that's Fix8 Market Technologies. We have a website as well, which we're also developing. As we develop the Fix8 Pro, we're going to incorporate a bit more of that into the Fix8 Market Technologies site, but that's all to come. Still a work in progress. Brian, that was pretty well all I wanted to run through.
Okay.
As the monologue.
We got about 6 questions.
Okay, good.
2 probably is more of a comment from your end, from a person named John. This is a proper spelling, John. First, you want to say thanks. Fantastic webinar. You always get excellent speakers. There you go. He says, question for later. Can you comment on the FUD surrounding the encryption lawsuit patent infringement on protocols like Fix and exchanges dumping the protocol and going back to proprietary binary protocols? And one last part, does Fix8 have a solid future, or is it on the decline?
Okay, well, they're good questions. Okay, just let me just reread
the first part
of that question about the lawsuit.
Yeah, okay, so that part is question. Can you comment on the FUD surrounding the encryption lawsuit patent infringement on protocols like Fix and exchanges dumping the protocol and going back to proprietary binary protocols?
Okay. I have to say I'm ignorant of that.
Yeah, same here.
Case. I can certainly comment on the latter part of that, but I'm unaware of the any case regarding the encryption. I mean, Fix is obviously an open protocol. Perhaps the questioner could provide some information on that
Yeah,
I'd like to know more about that myself.
I'll see if he's got a link. If you could provide the link, John, a link of some kind, I'll post it on the browser. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Okay, so the other question, it's a good question, and I can answer that from a different perspective. I'm a member of the Fix trading community, which is basically the industry. It's a non-profit organisation primarily to promote the Fix protocol. They have a number of technical working groups. One of them is the High Performance Working Group, which I'm a member of. And one of the things that they're working on is a new Fix version. And this new Fix version is really going to take on the move to these new binary protocols, the itches and the ouches, and there's various others out there. And I think this new Fix version is an attempt to recapture some of that and bring it back out into the open. Because what's happening is there's a movement to really, in some respects, it's an aggressive movement to the way things were back in the sort of 70s and 80s, where you had proprietary binary protocols, which were closed source, and they're efficient, but they're not open, and so this is the intention of the new Fix version, to try and address that. But I think the reason that this is happening is not, from my understanding, to do with any legal issue. It's really being driven by the ultra low latency world. This is the primary reason for it, and this is the primary reason that itch in particular has generated so much interest. And this is also why fast Fix is in trouble. I'll just explain that. Fast is a fantastic protocol. It's very, very cleverly engineered. It's been around for some years, but it's really the CME and a few other exchanges that took it on that really sort of brought it out into the public eye. It was originally developed by a guy by the name of Rolf Anderson. He's a Swedish guy from a company called Pantor Engineering. This guy I've met a few times, and he has a particular interest in efficiency, payload efficiency in binary protocols. And the whole notion of fast is extraordinarily clever and ingenious. The problem with fast is that the reference encoders and decoders are not really very good, and the very best encoders and decoders with fast are proprietary. CME has a particularly good one. And if you want to use fast well, you need to have a well-written encoder and decoder. Well, in fact, you don't need the encoder yourself. If you're using it as a consumer of market data, you really only need the decoder. But if you're actually going to be providing a Fix via fast, then obviously you need the encoder. But for most people, it's just the decoder. And the very best decoders are all commercial products, and they're quite expensive. So this, I think, is one of the issues that works probably against fast, and I think this is back to itch now. Although itch, it's not really an open protocol. It's actually it's owned by NASDAQ. It actually came out of the INET platform, which NASDAQ acquired some years ago, and it was really just designed to have the minimal bandwidth to make the most efficient binary payload. It's actually not the greatest protocol to work with, and it's not really that flexible, and however, it's extremely lean. And so this brings me back to my comment about the ultra low latency. In the HFT low latency world, sort of each reigns supreme now. And that's the primary objective, at least from my standpoint. Fast is also very efficient, and for a broadcast, for a market data service, it's extremely efficient, and designed to work nicely with multicast. So fast, I think, is still, it's still a great product, but I think the writing is on the wall, and I think CME in particular, who I think have decided to discontinue, are now looking to the new Fix version. But a lot of the other exchanges out there are moving to itch. A lot of the clearly exchanges that are running Genie and various other systems that are from NASDAQ, they're all going to be using itch. Itch is fast, itch is certainly fit for purpose. And I don't think anyone doubts that. Where that leaves fast, as I said, I think that to me that says the writing is on the wall for fast. Any comments on what I've just said? I'm still like I'm speaking to a.
You're in the
like,
thin air.
I just feel like I'm monologuing.
No, we're here. You got, okay, 2 comments came out of what you just said. First from Misspelled John, we'll leave it at that. He said, kind of like what you said about fast, is that it's similar to B2 bits. I know the vendor, but I don't.
I know the vendor. I don't know they've got their own protocol with that.
Okay, and the other comment was regarding the new IEX exchange. He says that the new IEX supports Fix now too.
That's for order entry. That's for execution.
Right.
But that won't be for market data.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've also put a webcast version. It's right on the browser for that comment about the lawsuit. It's actually in the chat box. So
I can see it here.
Yep. So anyone can grab that if they want. That's from Yair, who sent that. Just so everybody knows, we got Yair Altman online. He's legendary, and MATLAB on Document. He's online, so he's great to have if you want to know the back ends of MATLAB with Java. I got some questions for you too. Anyways, we got some other questions.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, there was another question. I'm gonna see if I can get this. I'm not. I think it'll be protected as well. But I'm gonna put this in the chat box. This is from the Misspelled John as well. I'm not sure if that's going to be protected, but he said this article is related to itch integration into Fix. Comment by David. Yeah, it's protected. If you can get the webcast version of that. But I know Misspelled John has some other questions. I guess you want to attack those?
Yep.
Yeah, he asked that previous question about, I don't know, it sounds like you've already covered it. Will you support fast over Fix? Or you?
Okay, no, I didn't answer that aspect of it, no.
Okay.
So let me just answer that. The answer is no, I won't.
Okay.
won't be doing that. Well, for a number of reasons. Firstly, because I think um, that fast is going to, unfortunately, become less favoured and less popular. And I think and this is really going to be driven by the exchanges, right? Because this, again, primarily for market data. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as I pointed out, the issue with fast is that the very best decoders are proprietary, and you can write a really bad fast decoder, and it takes some experience and some expertise to write a good one, and the very best ones have been written. So there is already there is an open fast, I think, project, open source.
Yeah, I saw it.
Which has which is a fast decoder. If you need fast, I would go there. If you're looking for an open source fast, I would go there. But for me, it's out of scope for Fix8. Fast, although the messages themselves are fixed messages once they're decoded, the protocol itself is not fixed. It's fast, and it's a streaming protocol. It's really designed for connectionless broadcast streaming. And as I mentioned before, it's very, very clever in the way that it works. But although the final message that you decode is in fact a fixed message, and it's fixed fields and fixed tags, etc., the protocol itself, the fast protocol, is not. And to me, that takes it out of scope of Fix8. And if you need fast, there are plenty of commercial and open source offerings out there which can fill that gap if you need a fast adapter.
All right. I guess his second part of that first question was, will there be a performance difference between the open source version of Fix8 and the Fix8 Pro?
That's a good question. Initially, the answer is no. The very first version will be essentially the open source version with a few additional important functions and features which are yet to announce. But these features are really more around resiliency and interoperability with existing systems for sort of medium to large sort of IT infrastructures. But as we move along, the core performance work will be going into the commercial version with, you know, important changes finding their way into the open source version eventually. So the priority will be to, the primary effort for performance will go into the commercial stream. And and that's for good reason as well. That work is expensive. To tweak and improve frameworks to get maximum performance is very time consuming.
Yeah.
And takes a lot of resources. And we can't exist as a project without being resourced. We're coming to that sort of situation now. We need to be able to survive as well. Of course, we're still committed to the open source model, and we will always be. We will never abandon the open source stream, the open source product. But clearly, we need to also survive, and so the commercial stream will be where our primary focus will be. And so any new features, any new improvements in performance are obviously going to go into the commercial version, and then will percolate through to the open source version. Having said that, that will not include bug fixing. Bug fixing will always be done in both commercial and the open source version. If there are any important critical showstoppers, any bugs that come to light, they will be fixed in both commercial and open source streams immediately. We're aware of them. Obviously it's important to maintain the integrity of the piece, both streams.
Okay, same misspelled John asked about Mac OS 10 version, if it's native to the OS 10, or is it the Darwin Unix based on the Linux port?
It's Darwin. When you say native, I think OS X is Darwin though, isn't it?
Yeah, originally, but maybe it was rewritten with a lot of the new APIs that Apple's been putting out.
Sure, but I think the core is still Darwin.
Yeah, I'm unsure of how the development on Apple is.
It may not be, but the Fix8 works on the latest version of OS X.
Okay.
Whatever that is, 10 point
Maverick.
6 or Maverick, whatever. Yeah, it works on that.
Okay. Now there's another comment. It goes back to the open source project where I've known this personally as well. That I've been eyeing a great open source trading platform called TradeLink, and somebody said that they hope that doesn't fall on the wayside of TradeLink. But I understand your viability. I get that. I'm in the same boat as well. If you want to respond on that in any way.
I'm not quite sure I get the question.
Well, are you familiar with the trading platform TradeLink at all?
TradeLink, yes.
Yeah, because there's been a huge controversy about how they've switched over to this new software suite called Gleam, and it's pretty well closed source now, but they still.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, they just did it about a year ago.
And so you can no longer get the open source version.
Well, you can, but it's an older. It's about, I think now maybe pushing a year and a half, 2 years now. That particular forked version, and there are some forked versions, but they get abandoned as well by other people, right?
Yeah, I understand. Look, and that's, I can understand why people would be concerned about that. I'm not. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm certainly not planning on doing that with Fix8. However, there has to be some compromise there. If you look at users of this sort of software, largely, there is so much open source out there, and it's great, but it doesn't. It's not entirely free. It costs to develop.
Yeah.
It costs to maintain. And I think, it sounds like with TradeLink they've gone completely the other way, and perhaps the danger of that is that they're going to be alienating their user base, which sounds like what's happened.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a very extreme response. I think I'd like to find a middle ground there.
If there is one.
If there is one. There's another. Have you heard? There's a product called JQ Widgets. Have you heard of that?
No. I think I know what it's about though, but go ahead.
So it's basically a Java widget library, and they've got the sort of model that I would like to emulate in Fix8. They've got an open source version, very well supported, nice community, active community, but there are some restrictions on it, and if you're a commercial operation and you're using JQ widgets, you will pretty quickly reach those limitations. It's not crippleware, it's not nagware, it's basically what you can do with the open source version has restrictions, and it doesn't have the full suite available. When you move to the commercial version, you get a whole lot more, plus you get support, you get the sort of support that, as I mentioned earlier, that a commercial organisation looks for. So there are a couple of models like that. There's another one called Sencha.
Yeah, I know Sencha, yeah.
Yeah, again, they have a similar model. And again, that's a model that I would like to sort of emulate with Fix8. And I think that can work. I think the idea, of course, is you don't want to alienate your open source users. And of course, you're not going to really get any commercial users without the open source product, without the open source users.
Right.
It's very hard for Fix8 to compete with the big players. And I don't really think we can compete head to head with the Camerons and the like of those guys who have very deep pockets, who have a lot of, who are established, who are big players in the market. And I think it's be foolish to think that Fix8 could compete with those guys head to head. I think the open source, having the open source stream, gives us a huge advantage in that the barrier to entry, there's almost no barrier to entry from a commercial standpoint, at least initially.
Yeah.
I think that's really a discriminating feature of this sort of dual model open source sort of business.
Yeah, but don't forget.
Go ahead. So a lot of players out there doing that. A lot of players are doing that out there. I think that's, to me, that's sort of the intelligent way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't forget your type of solution. I mean, there's some solutions out there are anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 per month.
Yes, indeed.
So whatever you charge it will be a lot more affordable, obviously. That's
right. I think it's interesting because what's happening in the fixed world in the last year or so, the last 2 years in fact, there's been a huge contraction in the number of vendors out there. There's a lot of consolidation, a lot of sort of vertical consolidation with vendors. And at the same time, there's been a lot more uptake of Fix by the smaller players, particularly in foreign exchange.
Yeah.
A lot more smaller algo operations who want to talk Fix. So they don't want to, they want to talk directly to an exchange or a broker themselves. They don't want to use a third-party vendor solution or a third-party ECN. They want to have a primary connection where possible.
Right.
And particularly in Forex, this is particularly happening in Forex. There's been an explosion in small foreign exchange operations with who want fixed connections. However, they're not going to pay the sort of money that the vendors are charging. And understandably.
Yeah.
And the vendor pricing model, the big vendors, is really, they're still pricing as though they're talking to big brokers and investment banks.
Yeah. John, the Smith spell, John said Cocoa is a native API for OS 10, where the Darwin is a separate and it's Unix based. So that's he just identified that for us. He also came back with what does David think about NYSE's open MAMA open source approach versus closed source itch, but Wombat is not fully open sourced.
No, but Wombat is going to be using the MAMA, or is using MAMA, as I understand. They've marked that as an open source protocol now. That's message agnostic, agnostic messaging layer. I forget what the actual acronym stands for. Look, I think the idea of Mama is great. I'm not sure it adds any value. You know, it's really the idea is really to sort of pave the way for the NISE offering. You know, I think they're one of the vendors that are probably struggling a bit. You know, I don't know a great deal about Mama. I've read the product sort of specs on it, and you know, it's a good product. It's a good idea, in fact. The NISE Fix offering, I think, is Arpia, and I think you know, just trying to find the relevant web page here on it.
Yeah.
It's a middleware agnostic messaging API. That's what it stands for.
Okay.
And it's now open source. They open sourced it about 2 years ago. I think it's a good idea, but I'm not sure. I haven't noticed any great rush to be supporting Open Mama.
Okay. Now, St. John came back with commercially. It sounds like Fix8 may end up as a cheap alternative to Onyx or Onyx X for slightly less performance. quickfix offers all its features for free. That's not likely to become a standard as much as quickfix is. If you look at Qt, for example, it's virtually a sort of standard now as its open source cross-platform. Same with Java, whereas afraid of committing to proprietary .NET C# in their infrastructure. I guess he's looking for a comment of something similar to those technologies.
So firstly, your comment on quickfix. Well, the performance differential between quickfix and say Fix8 or Onyx or anything like that is huge. If execution performance is not important, if execution performance, nominal performance is satisfactory, then yes, quickfix is fine. The problem, I think, with quickfix is that it's quite an old piece, and although it's been the most recent version that addressed some of its sort of shortcomings, it's actually quite an old framework. It's old C++ as well, and I think it's sort of fallen behind in terms of current best practice in frameworks. And there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 10 years that quickfix has sort of missed in its implementation. I think quickfix has been around for such a long time, and it is almost the sort of reference implementation for Fix. But that hasn't stopped plenty of other players coming into the market and making good business and offering products that are superior to quickfix in many ways. So I'm not quite sure if that where we're positioning Fix8 means that you either choose the big players, the established players, or quickfix. I think Fix8 perhaps is somewhere in the middle, but the performance that Fix8 is offering, at least in the open source version, is a major improvement on quickfix. So I think that is really one of the points about Fix8. It's one of the things that we'd like to highlight is that we're really offering functionally equivalent, at least, to Fix8, not to quickfix, but much more performant.
Anything about Qt at all, or as I said with Java?
Qt is great. I mean, Qt is a fantastic framework. In fact, there's a guy who's considering joining the sort of Fix8 group who is a Qt sort of specialist, and he is currently working on an application that's actually a Fix log viewer, which is written using Qt or Qt. And I think, I sort of agree with the comments about it. It has the that sort of cross-platform appeal. I think it's a fantastic initiative. And it's something that I think we might consider offering, providing a sort of Qt version, or at least some applications that you build in Qt.
Okay.
It's really, it's a great framework. I'm very impressed with it.
Okay. Another question from misspelled John here. Is there any reason why you think Forex and futures ECN exchanges are more likely to adopt standard fix and fast fix versus equity exchanges adopting strange binary protocols?
Well, I mean, it's clearly about interoperability. It's clearly about the whole basis of having an open protocol. I mean, again, you're trying to remove or reduce the barriers to entry. I think that's really one of the whole points with Fix. So I don't see the Forex brokers, ECNs, etc., moving to a binary protocol, proprietary binary protocol. I don't see that happening. I can't see the point of that. Raw execution performance is less critical in the Forex market than it is, say, in commodities or say equities markets. I mean, it is important, but it's not as emphasised. More importantly is how easy, how quick is it going to be to get connected, to get trading. At least that's from what I hear when I speak to people about it. And I think that's why Fix really makes sense in that market. I would be very surprised if we saw a movement to the itches and the ouches in Forex. I really would. I'm not ruling it out, but I would be very surprised with that. I think it's much less likely. I think Fix really makes sense in foreign exchange. But also, Fix now also, you might have
Still there? Oh, David, you out there? Can anyone else hear me? Somebody type up. Yes, yes. Okay, cool. Looks like we lost David.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
What was the last thing that you heard me say?
You were talking about itch and the possibilities of not being supported by the Forex brokers.
Yes. So I think the likelihood of that is pretty minimal. That it's going to be, perhaps I'm missing something here, but I can't see how it's of interest. How it makes sense for foreign exchange to be going that way, when really you want to promote sort of interoperability. You want to promote openness. You want to get the maximum number of players in the market as you can, and going down a proprietary binary protocol is basically closing off those opportunities. I mean, really, those decisions tend to be made on the sell side and typically made by exchanges. They're generally not made by brokers or other sell side players, they're generally made by exchanges who can, because they have the power to do that, right?
Right.
You know, they have that sort of final authority, and they do. Exchanges like the CME are they're at the very forefront of that, as is Deutsche Börse. People like that, exchanges like that, have the authority and they have the clout, and they will make those sort of decisions that are, you know, have far-reaching consequences. But the brokers and the other ECNs, and to a lesser degree the alternate execution venues, you know, they look for more open, you know, protocols.
Yeah.
I think fix that bill. Yeah.
Well, we got another question from you know who. This is a good question. This is probably a good one that you might like. Are you going to have a Java port or focus on C++ and optimize it for Windows and Linux and multi-arc, as you would say, with ARM or PPC?
No, there's not going to be a Java port, but we are going to look at the possibility of providing some sort of framework around J&I interface, so that Fix8 could be used within a Java application.
Okay.
But the model, the sort of model that Fix8 uses, really, I don't see it really migrating to Java work very well. There is plenty of Java fix out there, if you like, fix frameworks out there. The quickfix.j, I think, is one of those common ones. That's pretty widely used. So short of providing some sort of glue to enable Java applications to use Fix8, no, there won't be a Java port, not as far as I'm aware, not unless someone else has a particular interest and is prepared to put the work in.
Yeah.
It's a huge job.
I know that. Another question from you know who. Are you going to offer, oh no, will you optimize Fix8 for a kernel bypass like the commercial fix engines are?
Well, depends what you mean. There has been some work done on that. One of the guys in the Fix8 group got it working with solar flare, as well as 10G cards. And he demonstrated, and he actually published his results on a Jira ticket. If you do a search for 10G solar flare, you'll see. So I think that Fix8 can already work in those with that sort of kit.
Okay. Are you going to offer any certification exchanges for various exchanges with the Pro version of Fix8?
That's on our roadmap. We would like to do that. I don't know about certification, but I think we will offer reference certified, or look to offer reference certified adapters. Obviously, the primary certification has to be between the end user and the sell side of the exchange, but that actually is that's quite a specialised business, and that actually is a business that the big players are in. We talk about the Camerons and the Onyxes and those guys provide customised adapters for those particular exchanges. I think what we would like to do at Fix8 is perhaps not offer the complete final end user adapter, but provide the necessary tools to build one. So, for example, the right schema, and perhaps the shell framework with the session layer, etc., because some of these exchanges, for example, have non-standard ways of interpreting fixed messages. There's one particular variant that the CME uses, for example, which requires some customization. Yeah, I think I can't see us getting into that particular business, providing off-the-shelf, customized adapters for particular exchanges, but we might be able to look to providing some of what's necessary to do that, to set one up.
Okay, got two more questions from you know who. What's the microsecond end-to-end? What's a microsecond end-to-end latency for Fix8?
When you say, I mean, again,
That's very subjective, I know.
it's very subjective. We can only talk about processing time from the wire to a decode or to an encode, since what happens in your application really is out of Fix8's domain. But you know, we can do decodes in around 2 microseconds, 2 to 3 micros. We can do encodes in around 1 to 2 micros. So everything else really is up to your application.
That's pretty fast, though.
Now, it's pretty fast. Now, I mean, FPGAs are offering, you know, sub-micro performance. But, you know, that's with considerable investment.
Yeah.
So Fix8 can do a decode. Okay, again, pulling it off the wire, there's going to be some latency introduced there, and that's all going to be contingent on your environment, your hardware, and how you've tweaked it. And that's really out of the Fix8 domain. But if we're just looking at the processing that counts, which is the encoding and the decoding, you know, we are very fast. Now, I alluded to this earlier, we could be a lot faster. But in doing so, we would have to sacrifice the flexibility that Fix8 has. And this is sort of key to the decisions that were taken in the design. I'll just make that point, because I think it's an important point, because it's a question that often gets asked. Just bear with me for a second.
No problem.
I'm going to pull up.
I mean, if there's any stats you can pull up and put up on that chat box.
I can't, you know what, Brian, I can't see the chat box.
Well, you'll see on the right, there's a bunch of boxes. You'll see, there should be.
Oh, okay, it's only popped up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, the point I wanted to make was, just a second. I have had a number of emails and there have been a number of messages in the support groups over the last year from people who say, we can encode, we can decode a fixed message in a fraction of the time that you have published on your page. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you change this, change that, and you could also get that sort of performance? And my response to that has been, yes, but in order to get the performance which you are quoting, you have had to actually customize that code. And once you start customizing that code, that is no longer a general purpose solution.
Yeah.
And Fix8 is a general purpose solution. So if we're going to offer something that, if we could say we will work with any fixed version, well, that's what we mean. You can work with any fixed version. Yes, sure, you can write a customized CME order router, and you can get, you can decode execution reports in, in 1.5 microseconds. Yes, but you have had to write a lot of code. You have had to customize. You've had to performance tune that code. And that's the very idea, that's the very code that the Onyxes and the Camerons, and that's what they're offering. and that's what you pay for.
Yeah.
Well, Fix8 doesn't. Fix8 offers you, okay, not equivalent performance. I'm not going to pretend that we're near that, but we're close, and we're a lot closer to quickfix and a lot of other ones. We're very much closer, and you know, it's open source code as well. So if you think you can improve that, you can take that code and you can rework it, and you can get, you know, if you've got a team of clever engineers, maybe they can halve that latency with the Fix8 code. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, you know who? Are there any ISVs looking at Fix8 to adopt as a standard, or is it mainly some hedge funds and prop shops?
That's a good question. I don't know of any ISVs that are, or actually I do know of one. But because we've up to now been purely open source, we really don't get to know. We really don't find out. I do hear about things, and I do judging by the amount of contact and interest that I get from people, and the rest of the guys in the group get. But you know, there are a lot of people out there using it who we don't know nothing about. So you know, I don't have that sort of intelligence, so I can't really comment. You know, if you know, let me know. I'd like to know.
Okay. I think you already answered this question, or I know kind of how you're gonna answer it. You have no intentions of supporting scripting languages or environments like Python or MATLAB. So I'm gonna probably assume no.
No.
Or are you going to allow quickfix to keep that market, and for demos and testing purposes, and focus on the specialized C++ engine versus the quickfix C++?
Well, I don't see how quickfix offers any of that at all. I mean, quickfix offers functionally is essentially what Fix8 is offering. I'm not aware that quickfix offers any of that other stuff at all. There might be third-party pieces that are built on top of quickfix that use it, but I'm not aware of quickfix itself offering that. I mean, it is primarily you know, is in the same space as Fix8, which is a C++ framework.
And what about the other one where you're going to focus on the C++ engine, or are you going to? You want me to rephrase that question for you?
Yeah.
Or are you going to allow quickfix? Let me start again. Or are you going to allow quickfix to keep that market, and for demos and testing purposes, and focus on a specialized C++ engine versus quickfix C++? Do you understand that?
Not really. I don't feel that.
I guess what he's trying to ask is if you're going to be focusing only on the C++ pretty well and just optimizing it, as opposed to extending it to other languages. Like what your priority is going to be. That's what it sounds like.
Okay. Look, I think priority is really to develop the Fix8 Pro in C++. We have another initiative that we're also looking at, which is we're looking at an ultra low latency stream of Fix8, which is going to take the schema to compiler idiom to a much lower level. So it's actually going to write for every message and for every field. We're going to actually write highly optimizable, efficient code. But we're not going to support repeating groups. We're only going to support very flat fixed messages. And we think that with that, you know, that we can get those sort of really silly low latency numbers that have eluded us by taking that approach. And the ultra low latency, the HFT guys, that's what they're looking for. They want the super fast encodes and decodes they want the sort of round trip times uh, to approach the micro, sub micro possible. Well, I can't see it happening in software sub micro, but unless you're using FPGA or some sort of solution like that.
Yeah.
But the answer to the question is we're staying with C++. We're staying with Fix8 engine as it is. There'll be two streams: the open source and the commercial version, as discussed.
Okay, so he's come back and responded with, it's more like a comment for me, but here we go. Since you're an open source Linux guy, can you convince Brian to dump .NET and C#? So he's saying even Java would be better, and MATLAB has native support for it. Python, R have better integration also. Any comment on that, you think, David? I guess it's more of a general language question. But you're already addressing the Java anyways. Do you want me to go on to the next question?
Just one comment I would make. I think the nice thing about .NET C# is the way it nicely integrates into the sort of Microsoft development suite and environment. I think that's really their trump card. And that's I do think that the .NET is
don't worry, you're among friends.
Going to fall from favour, fall from grace somehow. I think OS X and Apple have made a massive inroad on that, and Objective-C and various other languages now that I think they're making a huge inroad on that, and also sort of Web 2.0 if you like, and the moving away from heavyweight applications and moving more into cloud-based application development, I think is sort of going to naturally move away from that .NET model, if you like. Although they claim that the origins of that was a distributed computing model. That was the whole purpose of .NET really, was to take on Java and that distributed model. But in doing so, it became a sort of behemoth itself.
Okay.
But that's not going to convince you, is it, right?
Look, I think what I've seen with this FPGA stuff, I'm like thinking, and I'm hoping that companies like MathWorks make the authoring onto FPGAs a lot easier, and especially with Xilinx, from what I've been researching lately. I'm like this is just from a trading aspect. I think that's going to be more and more mainstream and more affordable. However the execution is, I have no idea. And that's where I'm kind of leaning towards, like in the next generation. I'm just using .NET because it's easy to work with, just for trading ideas. So that's why I like .NET. I mean, I can whip together a complete plumbing of both the real-time data capture as well as the execution in no time. I have boilerplate code that does that now, and I can then bridge my MATLAB stuff into it very easily. But trying to do that in Java or C++, it's a lot more work. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm just using it more for testing purposes. But in terms of execution, yeah, I could see myself more focusing on something like an FPGA kind of idea, or pure C++, for sure. I think there was another question came in. QuickFix is simple and easy to program and very flexible. How would you say? Would you say Fix8 is more complex, and how about even lacking features versus QuickFix? Pretty valid questions, I guess.
Yeah, good question. I don't think Fix8 is more complex than QuickFix at all. It requires a slight sort of shift in your thinking if you've come from QuickFix, but it is no more complex in any ways. In fact, in some respects, it's a lot simpler. In terms of features, well, quickfix has been around a long time, and it's, my sort of accretion, it is a lot of people working on it. It's got a lot of features that have been added for particular use cases, which have ended up as features in the open source piece for all. The core functionality of Fix8 is comparable to quickfix. There's some additional support in quickfix, multi-session support, multi-server listener support, things like that, which Fix8 will have in its next version and will be added to the commercial version as well. But I'm not sure I would agree that quickfix has more features that are important, that are critical than Fix8 now. There are obviously a few exceptions, but it really more relates to how long quickfix has been around for, and I guess the maturity. But Fix8 offers a lot of things that quickfix doesn't. Probably what would be good would be a comparison between the two that highlighted those differences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got 3 more comments coming in from you know who. I'm not sure if you can answer this question, David, but the comment was, and to interact with C++ native DLLs, you need to use pinvoke, so it's not .NET, and you have no intentions of supporting .NET. I guess, I mean, can you? I'm not even sure if you understand what pinvoke is.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's.
It's basically like where you have your unmanaged code and then you're using pinvoke to directly call into the DLL.
Works, yeah, I mean, Fix8 will work fine in that. I'm not quite sure where the question is there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's more of a comment.
Yeah. It will work in an unmanaged environment. It works on Visual Studio, built on Visual Studio 12, 13 in an unmanaged environment, unmanaged code, as is. So it can work with .NET. Obviously, it's not managed. And I can't see the point of trying to move it into porting the code so that it is managed. I don't see the benefit of that. I think if you're going to do that, you may as well port it to Java.
Right.
If you're looking for the power of a VM, then I think you want to take it to Java.
You just commented pinvoke conceptually similar to Java JNI.
Right.
Let me see. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. And okay, this is a question. C# .NET doesn't scale that well. So what happened to the London Stock Exchange a couple of years back as they switched to Linux?
Yes. Interestingly, I actually worked, when I worked at NASDAQ, we worked on a trading engine called Xstream, and LSE came to us. This would be in 2004, I think, 2005, and they were looking for a new platform, and they were very interested in this Xstream platform. But interestingly, they decided to go with .NET. That was where they made that decision. And it's funny how, at the time, most people in the know were very, the people that I spoke to about it, were rather puzzled by that decision to go with .NET.
I'm sure the world was puzzled with that one as well.
Yeah. It's funny because they probably. I think has always been US exchanges have tended to favour Unix and now Linux Microsoft has never done very well in that space in the US. You'd think it would, but it hasn't.
Yeah, well,
They've tended to always.
I know DirectEdge is .NET, but Bats has taken them over, so I'm not sure where they're at with that. Because DirectEdge is more of a .NET shop.
Right.
That's the only ones I know for sure that are .NET. Okay, question was, David never commented on the article on the screen regarding Fix preparing for itch. So it's right in front of you, Dave, on the browser there. Since David is a member of the organization, does he have any comments?
Okay, all right. I might have actually seen this.
Or known about it?
Yes, so I can't see, well, they're talking about itch. I think they're talking about the equivalent, and what we're talking about here is what's happening in the, oh yeah, this is Jim Northey. Okay, this is really what's happening, as I mentioned earlier, with the new Fix version that's coming out, which they haven't gone public yet, it's not published, but there has been some discussion in the press about it, and essentially it will have very efficient binary payload. So the capability of having a connection or a session-oriented fixed session, which has very efficient binary payloads, and which is essentially the itch idea. So that's, I think, what this article is talking about. But it's not going to be itch, as far as I'm aware. As far as what in my discussions and involvement in the working group, no one's ever used the term itch. But you know, we're using simple binary encoding. They're talking about ASN.1. They're talking about Google protocol buffers. There's a whole lot of comparable, efficient binary protocols which will be supported, plus the option to have proprietary binary protocols. So I guess that would be my comment on that. There's nothing particularly controversial here. This has been discussed for the last 2 and 3 years. It's interesting that I haven't seen this article, but as I say, it's mentioning Jim Northey and there's a few other people. Actually, it'd be good if you could send me the link to that.
Oh yeah, it's in the chat box. I just put a new copy there.
Again, okay.
You got it? Did you get it?
Yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Now you say the new version of Fix. Are we talking Fix 5.x or 5.0?
I think they're calling it 6.
6.
Now, I mean, I can answer some questions on this, but I can't really be quoted on this because this is not a published protocol yet.
Because here,
really,
I don't know if you can see my screen right there. This is quickfix J. I've been playing around for the last few days with it, and it's got 5.0 and Fix T 1.1.
Yes, remember I mentioned that with the 5 series of Fix protocol, they published a new protocol which is called Fix8 A, which is the Fix transport. And Fix transport, the idea of Fix transport is that it can support any of the other Fix versions as a message or a payload within a Fix8 message. And this is already currently supported. This has been around for some years. This is not the new protocol that you mentioned.
Yeah.
This is existing Fix published protocol. Fix8 supports Fix8, by the way.
Okay.
Now, what we're talking about here is a new Fix protocol version. In fact, the similarities with the current Fix are pretty limited, and they're limited to the actual fix messages and the fix fields, but the actual protocol itself and the session layer and all that are all completely new. And as I mentioned, it's not published yet. It's still caught up in various stages in various committees, and I don't know when it's going to be published. But there has been some press and there has been some announcements made about it. There's a lot of discussion out there. If you do a search for it, you'll see there are plenty of articles, commentary about it. But the actual protocol itself has not been published. I think a draft has gone out to the members. I'm not sure if a draft has made it out to the public domain yet.
Is there any schedule for a final release of it at all, or like quarter
I
four?
believe they're trying to get it published by the end of the year.
Okay.
I'm not imagining there's going to be a mad rush for it. I mean, it's a fantastic piece of work. It's a great piece of work, but it's really targeting. Well, it's primarily, as I mentioned earlier, it's primarily, I believe, trying to target or address the ultra low latency space and the HFT space, which has been taken over by the Itches and the Archers, which will lesser degree fast. With this new version, it's going to be reunifying the two current streams of Fix now, where you have execution and you have market data. Well, with the new Fix protocol, they will hopefully be able to be reintegrated into a single protocol again.
Sorry, I'm laughing.
So you'll have, you'll be able to have your market data and execution together again.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily the intention, but the main reason that FAST evolved was because connection-oriented, session-based market data, which is essentially streaming, didn't make sense. It was inefficient and it was really hard to plumb. The plumbing for that was complex. It was all point-to-point.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas with a streaming market data service, you can have multicast, you can have efficient distribution of the market data, you can have built-in redundancy, and you get it out of your execution stream, where you have, you can then focus on offering execution capability to those that need it, and you can look after the market data vendors separately. So your Reuters and all those guys, and they're big money for exchanges. So, but I think with the new Fix version, I think they'll, as I say, we will see some reintegration of streams, if you like. That's just my opinion. I might be completely wrong on that. I'm just giving you my opinion on that.
And that could probably change in 2 months from now. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not pretending to be an expert on it. That's just my viewpoint.
Question was, does David have any experience with middleware such as TIBCO? Any recommendations for open source solutions?
Yes, I do. And this is one of the things that Fix8 Pro will have. We're actually going to have. We're going to provide a middleware abstraction so that we can offer basically the ability to integrate with existing middleware pieces and integrate Fix8 into that environment. There's some really cool middleware pieces out there.
Streambase.
Yeah, look, I think ZeroMQ is pretty good. I would recommend that.
Yeah.
RabbitMQ is also pretty good. There's lots of them out there. There's the advanced. There's a whole family of them which are gathered under the term AMQP. I think they call it Advanced Message Queuing Protocols. And I think there's a whole lot of them out there.
Yeah, no, ZeroMQ is pretty well standard.
Yeah, ZeroMQ is very good. The nice thing about ZeroMQ is it's very, very bare bones.
Yeah.
And it's very, very efficient.
Yeah.
And they've got all the sort of network topography permutations all worked out. You know, they're very, very clever guys. And so I would say zero MQ. In fact, zero MQ is one of the pieces that that Fix8 is going to provide an adapter for. That's on our roadmap.
That's good.
In terms of other middleware pieces, I've had a lot of experience with TIBCO and Trendline West Ultra Messaging. They're all very good. The Trendline West, I've had quite a bit of experience with that. Ultra Messaging. They've got quite a nice model. The way that they're very efficient use of the topic space, topic resolution. Not cheap, very, very fast, very good, very good. A lot of the big trading houses and brokers and stuff are using, and market makers are using Trendline West. I think TIBCO have responded with their own reworked version. I forget what they're calling it, but they're now claiming to be faster than Trendline West. They're not Trendline West anymore, by the way. They're Informatica. The middleware is really critical because that's really the glue that basically binds this sort of stuff into an organisation's messaging. And the messaging bus is, you know, it's really the modern design for communication between not only you know, software components, but offices. You know, some of the bigger brokers in particular and investment banks rely very heavily, and so the decisions they make about middleware pieces have far-reaching consequences in the organisation and in terms of their IT strategies.
Yeah.
Again, why we want to. Yeah, this is really on our roadmap.
We got more comments coming in from our friend here. He's called the TIBCO solution you mentioned was called TIBCO FTL, the new product.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Brings us back to our discussion about .NET on the exchanges. He was commenting, .NET Direct Edge is dead, Bats is killing it, so no more .NET on exchanges. He gave me a link, I can post that if you want. Quote is, all exchanges will eventually operate on the Bats technology, providing a common platform that will help reduce costs for customers. Do you want the link at all, or doesn't matter?
Yeah, sure. Yep, no.
Okay. So there's that. He has a question. Why do exchanges stay with Fix 4.2 versus 5.0 Service Pack 2? Do you think that this new Fix version will encourage exchanges to finally upgrade from 4.2, and wasn't 5.0 hyped up as well?
Okay, there's a lot of questions there.
Okay,
the first question is why they stayed on 4.2 or 4.4. Well, if you look at 5.0, you will see the difference between 5.0 and 4.2 and 4.4 is that it supports a much wider range of asset classes. That's really what they were trying to do. Support more variations in the standard asset classes and support newer asset classes. And they're also trying to provide a more generic and abstracted way of dealing with some of the components or pieces within a fixed message. However, the thing is that the vast majority of fixed users don't need that. Fix 4.2 and 4.4, I would say 4.4 is certainly superior, does what they need. So there's no real need to move to a new fixed version, which is not going to offer you anything. It doesn't offer anything that you can't already do with the current fixed version. Now, if you're on Fix 4.0, then I would definitely say you need to move. because Fix 4.0 has some technical limitations that were corrected in 4.2 and to some degree 4.4. 4.3 is no longer used anymore either. It's now, I think it's marked as being obsolete or
deprecated.
A deprecated version.
Yeah.
With the new Fix version, I think the Fix dictionary that they're going to recommend will be a 5.0 type dictionary. Though I haven't seen anything specific about that. But again, it's really going to be based on what people need, and I don't think that the majority of Fix users need everything, need even a fraction of what's in 5.0. Even the exchanges, or there are very few exchanges that are offering 5.0, almost all of them are 4.2 or 4.4. And I don't see any reason to change that. And this is also my comments that I made, intimated earlier about the new Fix protocol version itself. I think it's going to have a fairly slow start because unless you're specifically looking for ultra low latency, unless you're looking to in an HFT sense, there's really no impetus to completely re-implement your fixed layer. I think perhaps when the exchanges start to move and offer the new fixed version, then there'll be some, obviously they're going to set the agenda and they will force the buy side to upgrade. But I think the exchanges will also, just in my opinion, I think they will be very cautious about doing that. Again, you don't want to be alienating your customers. And you know, of course, setting up a fixed interface, setting up an adapter is a lot of work. Unless you've got real benefits to offer people in your case for change, then you know, people are not going to want to do it. And that's why people haven't moved from Fix 4.2 and Fix 4.4. The Fix 5.0 has been around for some years now, you know, and there's an extraordinary amount of work went into the analysis and design of that. And it's, you know, it's some great work there. Some of the very specialised alternate exchange venues offering it for trading some sort of exotic products, because some of those products are the grammar in 5.0 nicely describes some of the features of those assets, which 4.2 and 4.4 don't offer. And if you wanted to trade those assets using 4.2 or 4.4, you would have had to have added custom messages. And this is what the 5.0 wanted to try and capture that, and you know, so that exchanges or venues didn't have to spend so much time and work developing custom messages, which is typically how it used to be done. In Fix 4.2 and 4.4, even now the exchanges still have custom messages, the U series messages, which you know, it makes sense to have that, but you'll find if you look in 5.0, you'll see that a lot of that went into 5.0 that was previously in the exchange domain. Just one more thing, the Fix8, the test applications that Fix8 provides are all in 5.0 SP2, and the reason I've done that is to demonstrate that the Fix8's capability of dealing with components and repeating groups. One of the things that you'll notice in Fix is nested repeating groups. Now in Fix 4.4 you have a few messages that have nested repeating groups. If you look at 5.0, you have messages that have 5 or 6 levels of nesting of repeating groups. incredibly complex messages, and that makes sense for the asset that you're trying to describe, or for the execution that you were trying to report. And Fix8 can handle all of that, and handles all of that natively. And so that's why the test application is in 5.0. A lot of people complain that it takes a long time to compile the Fix8 library. Well, most of that compilation is compiling the Fix 5.0 spec, the schema, and it generates something like 20 or 30,000 lines of code, which takes a long time to compile.
Oh, yeah.
Again, that's just because of the incredibly rich grammar that 5.0 has, but it's largely not used.
Okay, these are more generic questions, I guess, from our friend here. He asked, what kind of desktop environment do you use for your Linux system? Are you using CentOS? Is it XFCE or GNOME 3? GNOME 3 is very annoying.
I actually use Ubuntu and GNOME and various Windows boxes, and I even use I've got a Chromebook.
Really?
Sort of cheap laptop.
Wow.
Well, if I need a terminal.
Right. Well, I never thought of that.
Really good.
I was going to ask. Now, there's just a question about: Are you David and the Fix8 guys traders or pure IT guys?
That's a good question. I'm an IT guy. I'm a technologist. I'm not a trader. Two of the other guys in the group are what you would call quant devs, and one of the other guys, two of the other guys are IT guys. So there's 3 IT, strictly IT, and 2 quant devs.
Okay.
And plus the various other contributors, I think they're largely sole traders or small trader developer types.
Okay. I think, believe it or not, David. Just before the question came in, how important would you say is technical programming, low-level knowledge in quant finance?
I think that's the very core of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what you're trading in, but clearly having very good quality engineering, software engineering is sort of critical.
Yeah.
And you need the right analysis, you need the right numerical analysis, but in terms of your implementations, if you're talking about algos, it's not just execution performance, it's the analytical component of the algorithm that must also be performant and must be able to operate in a risk mitigated environment. And it's a very complex business that, but I would say it's very important to have that. It's great for us, but
he just keeps asking questions. Will you be adding risk management software to Fix8 Pro?
No, that's not in the scope of Fix8. That's risk management is really very proprietary, and it's largely the domain of the client. It's not really unless you're providing a complete vendor solution for this. I don't really think this is in the scope of Fix8.
Anybody else got any questions? Because it's coming up to 2.5 hours. I think more than that now. This is one of our longer sessions. Anybody else got any questions? Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was going to say it's about as long as it was same as last time. I think it was 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we've had other sessions go like 4 hours. I think we had another one go 5 hours. It was crazy. guess you could call us Geeks Anonymous. Anybody else got any questions? We got 6 people still. That's quite impressive.
Good. I mean, all I could hear is I could hear your voice and I could hear my own monologue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would be interested in hearing some feedback or some comments.
Do you want to give me your email address or where people can reach out to you?
So, yep.
Or just put it in the chat box so people can see that.
Okay, I don't see the chat box. I see you've got to enable the chat box.
No. So just on the right side on your panel, you should see somewhere under there. Okay, so it's just davidD at fix8.org. Hang on here, let me just put that in the chat box for people.
I think I would really welcome any comments, any criticisms, any suggestions. You know, we don't know everything. We would like, obviously we want to promote Fix8, or you want to help people who want to use Fix. You know, we're not trying to push the commercial version necessarily. I mean, that's going to be our business model moving forward. But we want to bring the open source community with us as well.
Yeah.
We don't want to alienate or we don't want to create sort of an elite group of commercial users. We think the commercial users are looking for things that a lot of the individual users aren't concerned with. Support, maintenance, certainty, they're much more critical to larger organisations. In fact, a lot of the organisations, if you don't offer that sort of product with that sort of backing, that you don't get looking. But we still want to keep our open source community, and you know, it's a small community, but it's growing, and it's active. And if you look at the project itself, you'll see there's been a lot of activity. I mean, I'm the one that's primarily, you'll see my name appearing on most of the commits and things in GitHub, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm committing that is not mine. There are a group of contributors who contribute by sending the code to me directly.
Yeah.
Who don't want to be a part of GitHub, who don't want to be involved there.
Well, our friend here has made 2 comments here. He's pleading, don't go the way of TradeLink. You'll probably find it tempting though. So if you want, just look up TradeLink. And then the other comment was, a lot of financial software that starts out as open source ends up like this, closed and then either eventually bought up, dead, or stagnant and virtually undeveloped with a dead community, which is true.
Yep, that's true. That's true. However, a lot of products end up dead anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's the nature of the business. You know, product will fill a particular need, fill a particular niche, and then someone else comes along and does it better, or does it cheaper, or does it in a way that, you know, negates the need for the older product. I mean, I think that's just the nature of the software business. There's always new players, there's always new ways of doing things.
Well, you've already mentioned QuickFix, so by the sounds it's already kind of dated or getting dated with the type of framework it is.
It is, but it's amazing how many people still use it.
Yeah.
And yes, it is. It's free. It's open source. It's got a particular license that does appeal. It's got a BSD style license, which basically is do what you like with it. You can also sell it if you want to.
Yeah. Well,
you can't sell QuickFix, but you could probably sell an application that was built using QuickFix. I think that license appeals to particularly vendors. QuickFix is used heavily in investment banks. You'd be surprised at the number of big investment banks that have got their whole fix solution based on QuickFix. Yeah, and there's good historical reasons for that when they started.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't anything out there. As I say, QuickFix is really viewed as the reference C++ implementation.
Yeah.
isn't officially the reference, but it has that reputation. It has that standing as the reference implementation.
Because a comment came in, it's like QuickFix is pretty strong though. Fix8 A is continually developed. And from the other John, surprise, he's awake and still online. What are the licensing implications to use Fix8 on an FPGA?
That's a really good question. I think the implications are you need to talk to us, and we would help you, and we would come up with a suitable licensing arrangement. That's the short answer.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's released under LGPL, NASA GPL, which is the non-sort of viral GPL, which means you're free to use it internally, and you can publish your software if it uses Fix8, as long as the Fix8 part is not bundled or incorporated into your application, as long as it links dynamically with the Fix8 library, or alternatively, as long as you provide the object files. So it has the same license as basically the GCC build chain, or almost every other library that you can get in any of the Linux distributions, any of the development libraries. They're all generally LGPL. So Fix8 has the same license as those guys, which is this is basically a permissive license. It's a very permissive license. The only restriction, of course, is that you can't sell an application that incorporates Fix8 directly in the binary. You can sell an application which links with Fix8, that's fine. You can publish it, that's fine. So with FPGA, it's a special case, because in FPGA you have to incorporate everything on board.
Yeah.
And you would generally sell all of that bundle as a FPGA solution. So I think in that particular case, if somebody wants to do that with Fix8, they should come and talk to us, and we'll come up with a solution that suits everybody. That is, we would consider releasing a special license version for FPGA, if that was, if that was someone's intention to do that.
I think you're going to see more and more of that, though. I really think more and more people are going to be leaning towards FPGA, and especially with what MathWorks is doing with the the Simulink and the authoring is just getting better and better each major iteration of it. So I can see that happening.
Right.
Anybody else got any questions for David before I keel over? Oh, here it comes. We got another question. So you're going to do this webinar once a year until Brian makes it big and stops doing this. Yeah, I'll be making it big. While I'm looking at my bag of cat chow for my dinner. I like that one. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll be making, I don't comment there, but I don't know. Anybody else got any comments or questions for David? We're still waiting. Doesn't look like it, David. David, man, again, amazing. I know this is a second presentation, but wherever I can help you out, let me know.
That's great, Brian. I mean, I'd really like to, I do like to see some of your people in your group who are considering or currently using another fixed solution, or considering implementing their own to give Fix8 a go, particularly now that we support Windows.
Yeah.
And as I said, we do have some expertise available to help.
Yeah.
And if you want to actually make a go of it in a bigger commercial sense, then we also will be providing the Fix8 Pro Plus consulting services if you need professional help.
Well, the way
that.
it sounds with the .NET, I mean, it's just dying and dying, as everyone seems to be saying tonight. So our friend says, any plans for David to do this again? Like I said, David, anytime you want to do this, let me know. It just maybe you got new content, new things coming down the pipes.
Look, surely, yes. Look, that's, you know, I think when the Fix8 Pro initiative is launched, probably we can talk again a bit about it, and perhaps also about the implications for the open source stream.
Well, do you have a timeline on that Pro version?
We have a slated publishing on middle of May.
Oh, that early?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As I mentioned, there'll only be a few sort of discriminators, I guess, between the open source and the commercial version. But I guess, yeah, it's a work in progress. Yeah, we're looking for feedback and input as well, to sort of guide us a bit. Yeah. So yes, we would like to do another.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And just as I mentioned, without overstating it, you know, we also providing commercial services. So we, you know, if people are prepared to pay for help, for consulting, even if they're starting with an open source base, starting from the open source base, but need help in developing their application, we can also offer that sort of help. But that's quite apart from the commercial version.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
We also have a few developers who are consulting.
Well, like I said, the good thing, I mean, I call it the power of YouTube. So this will get put up on YouTube, and I'll be doing probably a blast tomorrow or the next few days on this webinar. So hopefully indirectly they'll help promote your cause.
Okay, that'd be great.
And it's up there forever and ever. You know what I mean?
Until the end of civilization.
Something like that. Until the cockroaches eat my brain or something, I don't know. There was another comment, brianpig.net, at its peak it seems it's past its peak. I guess, maybe, the way it sounds like. Anybody else got... Well, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
No, I'd say, I think that is, as we discussed before, I think it is, but I think that's really a consequence of what's come since .NET.
Yeah.
And how cloud-based computing is evolving.
Yeah.
I really think that's what's happening. I think Microsoft is, you know, it's. I don't think it's kept up with the times, if you like.
Yeah.
They will, though. I think they'll come back.
Yeah, I think so. With this new CEO, but again, I don't know. It just, that's the one thing I like about my MATLAB with the trading ideas, because it's portable to any of the major operating systems. So
that's right. You don't care. You're abstracted enough away from that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I think that's important.
You know, I've go ahead.
One more point I was going to make, just on a technical note. I'm not sure how relevant this is to your group, but we are now, the next version of Fix8 will be C++ 11.
Wow.
And so that will also be a distinguishing feature between, say, quickfix and Fix8, is that it's not just going to be C++ compiled with the C++ 11 switch. We're actually going to be writing C++ 11 code. In fact, we've already ported quite a lot of the code to C++ 11. So if you have a native C++ application, if you're using Visual Studio, for example, Visual Studio 13, which supports C++ 11, then you'll be able to use Fix8 and use the C++ 11 features of the language. So that's sort of a modernising step.
Okay.
And the language, C++ 11 is, it's such a relief to see some change in the language. some improvements that have been long, the long-suffering C++ crowd
Yeah.
have been waiting for.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just on a purely technical note.
Okay, because I'm being told here to do Brian should just do MATLAB and Java, then it will be cross-platform, no more biased Windows Linux talk. True. And then the other.
Yeah, but I mean that's horses for courses, isn't it? I mean that's it depends on your use.
I just use it because it's easy. I mean, somebody pointed to me a year and a bit ago to try out .NET, and I ended up getting hooked on it. It's like an addiction. But I've been slowly looking at C++ specifically, and with Visual C++, if it's pure C++, that same code should be portable to both Linux and Windows, I imagine.
Oh, yes, absolutely. No question.
So that's
right.
And obviously with the Java is the other good advantage with that too. Our friend says most of us were attracted to Quant Labs back in 2011 because of all the Linux open source talk. Yes, that is very true.
Yes.
But I saved my hair because of it. That's why I went Windows and .NET. But I'm getting older now, so I'm willing to lose my hair again.
Well, you grew back to it.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions before we wrap up? I'm sure you want to get on with your day, being on the other side of the planet, David.
It's midday here now.
Oh, right, I forgot. But still, at least you can get some hours in. Meanwhile, I'm going to go out and hit a bar and drink my face off. No, I don't do that stuff. Please implement a trading system demo with Java, MATLAB, whatever it takes, Brian. Okay, but we just had Yer Altman online. He's the Java MATLAB guy online for all that. We should have included him in something in the conversation. But anybody else got any comments or questions at all? Doesn't look like it. David, wow. I think we got 2 or 3 people that were really impressed with the project. For sure.
That's good. I appreciate that.
Oh, so
hope to hear from you more. If you have any questions or anything, just shoot me an email.
We'll do.
And if anybody, Brian, asks you any questions or anything, just forward them along, and you can post my responses back up if you like.
You want to answer one more question? It just came in.
Okay.
What's your opinion of complex event processing?
I think it's really the current best practice approach to in particular in the algo world, but as a general model to dealing with complex events, complex event signaling. Yeah, it's the current best practice. It really basically is deployed what used to be known as the reactor design pattern. If you know the gang of 4, the reactor pattern basically is designed to cope with complex event multiplexing, demultiplexing. And I think that's just, it's basically a software engineering design model, and I think it's widely used, and as I say, is the current best practice, as far as I'm aware.
Well, let's take one more question for the night. From our friend, he asked about opinions on Hadoop and big data.
Yeah, I've got no real views on Hadoop other than I know it works. I think big data is, everyone's talking about big data, and it's going to be
big.
I mean, it's really where companies like Google and Co are going to be, secreting away their opportunities. That's where they're. I mean, they are sort of at the vanguard of big data, in my view.
Yep, they are.
And but in the finance domain, I think really the notion of big data is more about analysis, numerical analysis, market intelligence, things like that. They've always done huge amounts of analysis. So I think big data is just the more public face of that, the people become more aware of that. What do you think, Brian?
I agree with exactly what you said. I know it's big in R and Python. I know MATLAB or MathWorks trying to get in on the buzz because they don't want to lose out. In terms of me, it's just a big database and just analyzing data. That's all it is to me.
Yeah. Well, they used to call it data mining.
Right. You could do it SQL Server, Hadoop, whatever. It's more open source now, and I mean, Hadoop is a traditional old school Google project, right? And now they have, I think there are two generations now. There was Hadoop, and then there was now Caffeine, and then there's some new project that Google's using to use to build their index off of.
I think Hadoop is Apache, isn't it?
It is, but I think it started out in the days of the early days of Google as part of their index. Yeah, that's where it came from.
Right.
And then Facebook, I think's been on it. They got their own thing, and then Google brought out a new one called Caffeine. And then there's and then there's another one that's come out or will be out, or I don't know what Google's doing, but all that stuff comes from Google, it sounds like. But to me, it's just how you look at data. Like data, I mean, it's no different than SharePoint and SQL Server, right? You know.
Right, but the main discriminator is scalability.
Yeah.
One of the main discriminators is
true. Yeah.
Distributed scalability. And that's really what the people, as I say, was why I said that Google was sort of at the forefront of that.
Yeah, they probably always will be.
Oh, probably always will be, yeah.
One last comment from our friend. He said, I think MathWorks put Year out of business with the toolbox that supports IB now, or interactive brokers. I think so too. It was a good product that he has, and still is a good product.
Right.
I don't know if you know undocumented MATLAB, which is basically trading with MATLAB through this product, but MathWorks changed it up where it basically sounds like it's replaced that product as one of their updates in the last year. Woo! That was quite a good webinar, David.
All right.
Maybe I'll. Yeah, because we'll be here all night otherwise. I send over your virtual beer if you drink beer or not. So let's give.
Thanks for having me, Brian, and thanks for the group. It's been a pleasure, and there's been some good questions.
Yeah.
I hope I've answered them to your group's satisfaction.
Oh, I think so.
It's funny, as I say, it's funny this format. You feel like you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, I know. I'm just used to it by now. I do it 24 hours anyway. It doesn't stop me.
Right. Whereas a proper, I guess, in a go-to meeting, you could hear everybody. It's just
right.
Format.
But the problem is when you used to do it that way, and you get people calling in from places like India or China, you'd hear a lot of background noise.
True, and you hear a lot of echo.
And it distracts people. True. So we ended up muting everybody. It is a weird format, but we're all here. I can still see people online. All six of us. So we're all out there. Yeah, man, thanks again for doing this. I learned so much about Fix and all the different variants of it and the different variants within Fix itself. I'm definitely, I know definitely we're looking at Fix, and I think this is going to be the way for what we're doing for sure. After learning the difference between what you got and quickfix, for sure. So yeah, I'm sure everyone, on behalf of everyone, thanks for doing this. This is quite a bit of work on your behalf or on your
it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. Let's hold another one too. As I say, after the Fix8 Pro and things that develop in the next 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure. And I got a comment from Steve. He says, "Nice presentation, thanks." So there you go.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was awesome. Hopefully, we can give you some guidance as well on some ideas. And I've given out your email at david@fix8.org for the email.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
I
I'll
appreciate.
thank you again, and let's stay in touch, Brian.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. So everyone's got his contact if you want to reach out to david@fix8.org. So I'll give it a wrap for tonight. Thanks again, David, for coming on out. Like I said, I learned a lot. This is really valuable even for me.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, all right, everybody, have a good night or a good day wherever you may be, including you, David.
Will do.
At 12 noon, close. Anyways.